Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and your guest is Rob Schneider. He is heavily involved in the New York scene. He was one of Feinstein 54 Below original programming directors. He has a very popular podcast, also on Broadway Podcast Network, called Behind the Curtain, Broadway's Living Legends, so make sure to check that out. He's one of the two co-founders of J2 Spotlight Musical Theater Company. And we get into that story, of course. The other co-founder, Jim Jamiro, an incredible guy, invented the Disney Channel. So you want to hear his story. That episode with him, I interviewed Jim, just dropped on my other podcast, Was It Chance, which you can find wherever you're listening to this podcast now. So make sure you're subscribed and listening to that as well. It's super fun. Rob is a super fun guy. I cannot wait to share this episode with you because we share the same amazing, dry? Yeah, we'll go with amazing, horrible sense of humor. So I apologize in advance for all of our really amazing, horrible jokes. Find me online on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening. Even on Spotify, you can leave a review now. That's brand new. And now everybody, please enjoy this episode with Rob Schneider.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Our guest today is one of Feinstein's 54 Below original programming producers, a freelance director, one of the hosts of the amazing podcast Behind the Curtain, Broadway's Living Legends. He's also the artistic director for the J2 Spotlight Musical Theater Company, which just began its second season with the first show opening February 10th. Get your tickets now. Check the show notes for that. Having survived the Broadway shutdown of 2020, 2021, they are back, and he even has a new book coming out on March 31st called 50 Key Stage Musicals, which I personally cannot wait to read. Again, check the show notes for the link to pre-order that now. Rob Schneider, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Alan, thank you so much for having me. Do you want to be my agent?
I would love to. Do I get 10% of
nothing? Absolutely.
Of nothing? Yeah.
If you find a penny in between your sofa, that's your annual salary. So I don't have to do anything.
Sweet. I think it's very cool that you're the artistic director for J2, and I would definitely want to get to the book because the book, I'm envious of people who write books, and we're going to get to all of this stuff because I want to write a book. I don't know exactly what I want to write it about, but
Pop-up, scratch and sniff. What are we thinking?
Pop-up, scratch and sniff. Definitely, I think that's an underutilized genre. So
I think so too.
But it's going to be in partnership with Mike Rowe. So Dirty Jobs, Pop Up, Scratch and Sniff.
I can't wait. I'll buy the Kindle edition.
Well, spoiler alert, Amazon and I, we've been talking. So they're going to have a new Kindle with smell-o-vision.
That's actually a genius idea.
Oh my gosh.
Go copyright this.
What if you had a book or a Kindle that as you turn the page, it had a little poof of book smell?
I would love that. Actually, I think that could be a lot of fun.
Because there are a lot of people that, like, I'm a digital guy, obviously very tech nerdy, and I don't like physical books because of, like, there's an impact in the environment, and I just, like, if I'm traveling, I want literally, you can put an entire internet in your pocket. Yeah. So there are people who are like, no, I got to have a physical book. I want to turn the page, the smell of the book, right? And of course, there's like the touch. We'll get there, but smell-o-vision in a Kindle.
That's lovely, but you should date more. Like if that's exciting you, is the fact that the books smell. Like, so let me get you on Tinder or something or Grindr. Let me help you out a little bit, please.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant transition to get away from dating. I don't know. J2.
Yes.
You just started season 2, or you're about to start or have started, depending on when you, the listener, are listening to this episode. So first show, February 10th. J2, the artistic director for this amazing, amazing theater, which you co-founded with Jim Jamiro.
Yeah, yes? The guy who created the Disney Channel.
Yeah, Jim absolutely phenomenal. Shameless plug. I interviewed Jim for my other podcast, Was It Chance? That'll come out around the same time this episode does. So amazing interview. But this guy just loves theater. How did you two get connected? And then where did the idea for starting a theater come from?
We got connected actually through 54 Below. I had done the 50th anniversary concert of The Happy Time, which I'm still surprised is not a national holiday. And when I did that, Jim, who I did not know, came to see it and apparently had a really good time. And he sought me out and he was like, can we get lunch together? And so usually when someone asks me to lunch that's seen a show at 54, it's usually like two geeks just geeking out about musical theater, and we have a club sandwich and we go home. But he said to me about halfway through the conversation, he said, how would you like to do what you're doing at 54 Below, but on a larger scale? Because at 54 Below, we only do the songs. There's no book, there's no choreography, there's none of that stuff. So Jim was asking what would happen if we could like expand it and actually do the whole show. And I was like, well, if you've got the money for that, I am more than game. And we did a handshake, and that's how that all got started. We both had parallel ideas because I had been thinking about doing a theater company for a while, specifically to showcase new and emerging talent in the city, because I really don't think there's a lot of places that do that. Like people that are just starting out. And he wanted to bring back a lot of the old shows that he had seen and he had loved growing up. So I was like, can we marry these two ideas together? And that's how it came about.
So, okay. So then continue then. You said you were going to do this. And how long ago was this? Because you started season 1 right before the pandemic or during the pandemic?
Oh my God. Right as the pandemic started. I have to tell you that our first season, it was cursed because like a week before the first show was supposed to open, my mom died. So I had to go back home to California and take care of that. Then I got back and we were about to open the third show. And we were literally walking to the theater on opening night when the theater called us and said, hey, the city's going to go into a lockdown, but it's only going to be for 2 weeks. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And 2 years later, we're doing that show. So,
wow. So you never finished the first?
No, we never finished our first season. We got 2 shows up and running. And then the third show literally closed on opening night.
Wow.
And it was so sad because like a year later, they were like, hey, you have to come clean out the theater now. And we went in and it was all still set for opening night, except there was dust on everything. It was like very surreal and very bizarre. So I'm happy that we're getting to do it again because I think it's a really special show.
That's really weird. Oh, man. That's super shitty.
Would you like to hear more depressing stories on today's podcast?
Well,
called Why Am I Living?
Well, you obviously have a massive, massive, massive love for theater because your podcast, your podcast has been around for years. You've got like 500 something episodes. It's insane.
We started in 1968, and then we were just waiting for a place to launch it. And thank God podcast came around.
You were just like, I'm going to record these. I'm going to call them a podcast, and then I'm going to wait for a company called Apple to invent the iPod, and then call it the podcast.
Our first guest was Silent Screen Star's Theta Barra. It was a very awkward conversation, just dead silence on her end.
I'm going to play a clip of that right now.
Doesn't she?
That was amazing. That was amazing. That was absolutely.
Yeah. She just let it all hang out there. Good for her.
All right. So tell me then, take me back, little Rob. Tell me about your little Rob.
Never been little. You can talk to my doctors about that. Never been little.
Well, what got you into musical theater? What was like the touchstone moments to bring you into your love for performing?
I was born in Brooklyn, and from the time I was 3 years old on, my parents took me to a Broadway show every weekend. And then when I moved out to California, when I was also somewhat young, they then to make up for it, just got me every single movie musical that was available. So for me, it's always been a part of my DNA. It's always been a part of my life. So I can't even think of a time where musical theater was not an essential part of who I am. So that's how I got into it, and I loved it. I can't sing worth shit. Can I say that on here?
Yeah,
I cannot sing worth shit, but I've directed over 100 musicals.
Well, when did you decide that you wanted to do it professionally? And I guess, and what did your parents do that they were from 3 years old? That's a lot of commitment to take you to that many shows.
It really is. My mom was a psychotherapist and then retired when me and my brother were born, so that way she could become a homemaker. And my dad, he's had an interesting life. He was Chuck Schumer's chief of staff.
Really?
For a number of years when Chuck was an assemblyman and then a congressman. And then my dad switched careers and he's a private investigator.
Whoa.
It was
remind me not to make you upset because you're going to be digging up dirt on everybody, I'm sure.
It was odd growing up because like if I did something wrong, my dad would find out before I could confess to it. And then my mom would explain why I did it. So, you know what I mean? Like there was no sense of normalcy there. But yeah, and my mom really loved theater. And so she was the one who funneled me into that sort of career path.
Why not go into private investigation? That seems like such, you see spy movies. That seems like such a fun
My
thing to
father
do.
literally sits outside in like a Toyota Corolla on the floor for 6 hours with a camera waiting for somebody to come out. And I was like, this is not necessarily the life for me. He loved it. He loves it. I'm just like, this is not for me. I cannot sit in the car that long.
It's a good time to listen to podcasts, I guess.
That's what I said. He does. Sometimes he'll text me. He's like, hey, great podcast. By the way, we arrested the guy. Thanks, man. He's like, well, the guy chased me with a bat, so I had to stop the episode, but I'll listen to it later. I'm serious. I'm like, okay, thanks. Thanks, Dad.
Oh my goodness. That sounds like so much fun. That sounds like fun. Well, God, I love that. I love that you have parents with such non-Broadway theatrical backgrounds who found such an enjoyment and such a value and to bring you and expose you to it and support you, it sounds like, along the way and for your journey to get into the space. That's huge. When you have two parents who are not involved and then to have somebody who's like, this is all I want to do, that sometimes can cause a lot of conflict.
Oh, absolutely. But no, my parents were always supportive of me. And I remember one time in college, I was going through like an early midlife crisis. And I was like, I'm not going to do theater anymore. I'm going to be a lawyer. And my parents got so angry at me. And they said, you cannot give up on your dream. You cannot give up on this. And I think I'm the only person I know that has that story where the parents were angry. I was going to leave the arts,
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky in that way. I was really lucky in that way.
I did not have that conversation. My dad didn't have an opinion. Well, he didn't voice his opinion. I know he wanted something concrete.
Yeah.
And my mother gave me the mandatory advice that I had to take of you can do computer science you can act with a computer science degree, but you can't do computer science with an acting degree.
Oh.
So, because I originally was like, I'm going to look at acting schools. Columbia, that sounds like a good one. That's in New York. I'll go there.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, too expensive. Stay local in North Carolina, where I'm from. Lots of good universities there. So I ended up getting a computer science degree, which has now led me down this funky path of combining tech and Broadway and theater. And it's been an interesting journey as well.
What did your folks do?
My mom was a dance major, and my dad was a neurologist. They're both retired now, and so then my mother. I'm the oldest, so once I was born, I've got a younger brother, and the two of us were home. She decided to be a stay-at-home mom too, and God, I have so much respect for her now that the pandemic, especially now that the pandemic is here, and I'm having to do a daytime job, and be somewhat of a full-time parent because the kids have been home. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, full-time parents, I love you. You are so undervalued. And Jesus, I'm a better dad when I don't see my kids all the time.
Hope you heard that, kids. How many kids do you have?
Two, just the two.
Just the two, a boy and a girl, or two
boys? Two boys.
How old are they?
7 and 5.5. So
oh wow,
they're both little shits, and I love them. And they bounce off the walls. They are the cutest, annoying, best things to ever happen to me.
I love that. How did they cope with like online school?
Well, they don't really know much difference, which is sad.
Yeah. I have a friend and her kids are the same ages as your kid. And she said the same thing. She said, "Oh, they really don't know the difference because they didn't have." And that is sad. You're absolutely right. That's very sad.
Because in Brooklyn here, of course, where we live, right? It's the New York life is not the same. And even in suburbs now, it's not the same when we were kids, where it's just like when I'm 7, like my older son, when I was 7, I would go out for hours and my parents wouldn't know where I was.
Yeah.
And you can't do that in New York anyway. You shouldn't.
No.
But then even in suburbs now, because of, what I heard was 2 years ago or something. It was right before the pandemic. There was like a mom who got arrested for letting her 8-year-old or something just walk home from school by himself. And so she got reported to Child Protective Services for letting her 8-year-old walk through a park by himself or something. And it was ridiculous.
Years ago, all our parents would be in jail.
Right. That's the point.
Yeah.
I'm like, you rode in station wagons without seatbelts and we're jumping around.
Or like hold mommy's cigarette while she makes a left-hand turn. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, here, poison test this bourbon for me. There you go, boy. Oh, you're still alive. All right.
My parents. Makes you strong.
Puts hair in your chest.
Put hair in your chest. Oh, come on. You can live in a house with lead paint. What's the problem? Makes you strong.
Oh goodness, yeah. So that's what my parents did. They listened to musical theater albums all the time. My mother listened to a lot of operas too. But my touchstones, my things were Singing in the Rain, Music Man, and West Side Story on VHS, and we listened to those, wore them out, watched those all the time.
Yeah.
And the Cats soundtrack, cast album, the original cast album of that, and then there was the other thing. There was a Sesame Street Big Bird album I listened to. Those were like the 5 things as a kid that I remember very well.
I love it. Oh, that's so cool that your parents gave you that.
Yeah. But they were more practical. Like, I think my mother definitely wanted to live vicariously through me a little bit. So she encouraged me to, I put in air quotes, follow the dream, while still saying, don't follow it too hard because you really need to pay the bills.
Yeah. Well, it seems like everything's worked out for you. You have a great job and you're still involved in the arts.
It's been an interesting transition. And now authors, I want to come to your book a little bit, which I want to tie into the podcast, because you seem to have such a deep knowledge of theatrical fundamentals, of the pivotal people, even behind the scenes, not just on stage actors, right? But let me read the little bit from your podcast. So your podcast, Behind the Curtain, collects the wit, wisdom, and anecdotes of musical theater's greatest artists from the golden age to now, from actors, directors, designers, playwrights, press agents, to general managers. So it's a podcast. It's a celebration of the giants who helped shape the theater. So this is a lot of deep knowledge and trivia that even your standard theater lover, who is just going to know cast albums and leads and whatnot, wouldn't even get into. So where did this extra level of detail come from?
So growing up in California, we rarely went back to New York. So if I wanted to find out, and there was no internet, if I wanted to find out something about musicals, which I loved, I would go to the library and I would take theater books off the shelf, and I would literally sit there for hours and hours and hours, and you would read the same books over and over and over again. So you just sort of started to memorize these names that popped up, and you saw things like general manager, and you were like, what is a general manager? And so for me, that's where that minutia detail comes from, because I could not go to a Broadway theater anymore. We were all the way on the West Coast. And like I said, there was no internet. So you would read the liner notes, you would read the magazines, you would read the New York Times, and you would just read it over and over and over again, because that's all you had access to. You say you and I would both do this, but I think this was, I picture you in a dark library with one spotlight right above you. Yes, thank you, Dr. Allen. I'm sorry. I think I'm realizing a lot of my issues now. No, I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And then I got to a point where I was like, I would love to talk to all these people now that I'm in the city, whose names I've been memorizing for years and years and years. And that's where the idea for the podcast came from. Purely selfish. I wanted to meet all these people that were my heroes.
Was it hard for you to get going? Because you're one of the OG theater podcasts.
Thanks.
Right? Like you've been around for decades, since the 50s or 40s, the 1840s.
Yeah,
And
our first episode broadcast live from the opening of Showboat, which was very exciting for all of us. So we've been around a long time. Oscar Hammerstein, we're from a podcast. What's that? Be careful, that stock market's going to crash. So what was the question?
I have no clue.
One of the OGs. Yeah, I think it was us and the amazing Patrick Hines, who had the Theater People podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't listen to podcasts before all of this. So I was like, like you sit and you talk for a while. Let's see what happens. And 500 plus episodes later, this is what happens.
What do you think you've learned, a through line that you figured out that you wouldn't have known if you hadn't been doing the podcast?
I think for me, it validated that there is no security in this business and that you really are as only good as your last. We interview people that are 80, 85 that have, multiple awards. And after the podcast is over, they'll say, do you know if blah, blah, blah is auditioning? Or do you know where I can get money to produce this? And you go, huh? So that never goes away. But to me, I'm also like, well, that's very comforting. Because I think in our mind, we always go, there's going to be a moment where we will hit artistic success and we can just relax. And to hear 80 and 90-year-olds going, oh, no, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. That was a through line, and Danny Kaye was an asshole. That was the other through line that we learned. Those were the only two things I can bring to the table.
Oh, no. Danny Kaye is one of my mom's favorite actors. I'm going to tell her not to listen to this.
Alan, we have heard stories about him. Anytime you bring Danny Kaye up, he'll go, he's an asshole. And then it becomes group therapy, and they just want to talk about it and get it off their chest. That's the one consistent. I don't think we've ever found anyone who said anything nice about Danny Kaye.
What's interesting is my version of that answer is that I'm glad I didn't make it on Broadway.
Oh, yeah? How come?
Because of the exact same thing you just said. Because when you're successfully in a show, you're still looking for your next job.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't go away. There's no sense of security.
No. And then you throw in all the other crap about global pandemics and everything that, there's TV and film and voiceovers, and the internet has overcomplicated it because now anyone can be discovered on YouTube or on TikTok. And you've got what the production, and there's nothing against these people. This is good and bad because people who wouldn't have the opportunity are being found, and
yes.
it dilutes the pool and makes it harder for even those people who are still that successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, God, that's my through line, is that I love hearing everybody else's stories, but damn, there's a part of me that's like, I want to be the best and try to overcome it, but probably wouldn't happen. And I'm glad I don't have to have that struggle.
No, but you've also created your own path for yourself. And I think that's also something that's really important, that I also think was a through line for us on our show, which was hearing people really creating their own journey, and no one's journey is the same. And I think, because I teach as well, and I think that's something I wish a lot of college age students knew about this before they went into the industry. Because I think they're being taught, you're a Corey Cott type. So that student then goes, okay, well, I'm going to learn all the songs Corey Cott learned, and I'm going to do what he did, and I'm going to work at the theaters he worked at. And it's you can't do that. Mm-hmm. Right now, I feel like it's in education, it's a lot of factory. It's a lot of an assembly line of things. So I wish that students would embrace more of their uniqueness, because it's the uniqueness that becomes successful on Broadway. Look at somebody like Lynn. Look at somebody like Kristen Chenoweth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their unique voice is what makes them successful. They're not copies of anybody.
Well, right. So embracing what makes you unique, embracing what makes you specifically different is what's going to set you apart in a good way. Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, because a lot of the teachers, like you said, the teachers are pushing people through an assembly line. And what I have seen being in the technological space is that every day, the gap between what teachers are traditionally telling people, you can be a good singer, you can be a good dancer, you can be such and such, but you are your own product, and you have to know marketing skills. You have to know the business of show business.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of, I think, conservatories are falling real flat right now.
I agree with you 110%. And I'm going to be honest with you. That was another reason why I created the podcast. Kevin and I, who's my co-host, we both taught, and he had a very interesting undergrad experience. And I taught at Penn State University, and I love Penn State, but at the time there were some things I'm like, this feels wonky to me. But I don't think universities do a good job in the theater department of building a bridge from the academic world into the professional world. Mm-hmm. Like the last semester, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, you're a product. And students have no idea what to do. And so for me with the podcast, I was like, I hope young people are listening to this and hearing, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You do have to be a business. You do have to hustle. And this is how you hustle, you know? Mm-hmm. That was also an important part for me, which was I wanted to be educational as well.
Where do you teach? Let's plug your teaching right now. Where can we take classes from you?
I teach at Penn State University. I've been teaching there since 2006, but I teach online now. The New York Film Academy, which has a musical theater department, and Mount Union, which is a school in Ohio. All three of those are online based.
So I guess, location ultimately doesn't matter anymore. And I think that's case in point, too, to what we were just talking about, that you have to be able to navigate the technology.
And I'm going to be honest with you, I think that's a fantastic thing. I think the fact that we will not have any more open calls where people are lining up at 3 a.m. in a blizzard to 8 bars or not to sing at all, which to me is so horrendous and sadistic. I'm so happy that's gone, because now we'll put you on self-tape, because now everyone knows how to do a self-tape. But you're right. Now everyone has to learn the skills of what makes a successful self-tape: audio, visual, lighting, and all that stuff.
That's one of the silver linings I feel we can pull out of the pandemic shutdown is that everybody, without knowing it, had to learn how to be a lighting designer and a sound engineer, and everything that they previously didn't know about home recording setup. All of a sudden they had to be experts on, so they can continue to work.
And I think that's great. I really do. I think it's such an exciting time to be in this business, because it is rapidly evolving.
How did you guys audition for J2 for the second season? Did you do it through all?
The initial audition was self-tape. Everyone, which was great, because then we could see people from all over the United States who wanted to submit, which was very exciting. And then we felt if we needed to have them in for a callback, we brought them into an in-person callback. I do not want to go back to in-person open auditions. I think it's unfair to the actor. I think it's not, I don't think it shows them to the best of their ability. And I know some actors don't like that because they want to be seen by a casting department. I understand that, but I think in the long run, this is better off. For them,
I agree with you.
For them.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a lot nicer. Like you said, you don't have to drive overnight, line up at 3, 4, 5 a.m., not even get seen if you get, because you might not even get seen at all. There's these people trying to get into these equity open calls when they're not even casting, because the union rules require you to have open calls.
Yeah, and then you go into the room and these people behind the table are just sitting there waiting for their day to be over. Yeah. It's not helpful for anybody. So I'm excited. I do think that out of this pandemic, there have been positives that have come out of it, and I think that is one of them.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. Your book.
Yeah.
50 key stage. Oh, let me get the title.
I don't know either. So there we go. I used to call it 50 key musicals. And then they were like, no, it's called 50 key stage musicals.
50 key stage musicals. So
as opposed to like 50 key kabuki musical. I don't know.
50 key West End Australian kabuki musical.
Koala, show number 1. Sorry.
Oh, you call that a show? This is a show.
Oh, that's good. That's really good.
Pulls out a giant knife with the word show on it.
Yeah. Crocodile Dundee and My Fair Lady is what I've always wanted.
They're making a Karate Kid musical. They should make a Crocodile Dundee musical.
Absolutely. Get Hugh Jackman in there. We're ready.
They just call it Crikey.
I would see that. I would absolutely see that. And if he wants to sing Shapoopy in it too, awesome. Let him live his life. But let's just get this musical off the ground, please.
Well, I'm the brains. You can bring the money.
Great.
Or vice versa.
Right.
There we go.
Jim,
We need 50 key stage musicals. What the book? It comes out March 31st.
Yes.
They fast track this because it's such a freaking awesome book. So give us a little hint of what is one of the biggest. I guess these are all transitional moments, right? The 50. How did you narrow it down to 50? And where were you like? I guess is there a roadmap of vaudeville started and then there was Cats.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much the book, Alan. I think you've read it. It's literally one page. No, with the thing that we were guided by was if it wasn't for this show, there would not have been shows A, B, C, and D. So you had to. So that was our criteria, and that's how we got it down to the 50 that we selected. There are some on there that I know I know there are shows that are missing that are gonna piss people off, and I know there are shows that are in this list that people are gonna be like, what the fuck? Like, how did they? Why? Why is Seussical in there? You'll see. Read the book.
Which came first, Seussical or Shrek?
Seussical.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Then let's see. Let me take a guess at a couple. So Beauty and the Beast was ushered in the whole age of Disney theatrical.
Fabulous.
Rent brought in the rock opera.
Great.
Hamilton. You got to end with Hamilton, probably. I don't know what you ended with.
No, I think we ended with Dear Evan Hansen.
Oh.
We ended with Dear Evan Hansen. I'm going to be honest with you, and this is really controversial. We were not even going to have Hamilton in the book.
What?
Yeah, because we were like, well, what other musicals have sprung up because of Hamilton?
Huh.
And that was our first discussion, which was like, well, what exactly? Because we're so close to it. Just because we're so close to it. That's why. We were like, what has it created a space for in terms of other shows being created? So that was our first thing. And then as we dug in, we're like, oh, I think we have different angles on it. But originally, it was not going to be in there.
That would be very controversial. But you're right, because I feel like in the theater space, it's created an opening that people haven't filled in yet because there hasn't been enough time.
Yes. And that's,
but where it has gone because there's more money is into the TV and especially the movie space.
Yeah. And, it brought up some really fantastic discussions about casting. It brought up some fantastic discussions of having a musical really embedded in a political movement. We hadn't had that previously. The fact that Hamilton was really emerging at the same time as the 2016 election, and so much of the themes in Hamilton were being picked up and being put into the news cycle. That was it. That to us was interesting. So we were like, we can't find any other shows yet because it's so close to it, but we have some other ways of getting in there.
So you've worked professionally and personally with Sondheim too. Mm-hmm. How many of his shows made the book?
Oh my God. West Side Story, Gypsy.
Of course.
Company, and Sweeney Todd. Those are the four that got in there.
I can see all of that.
Those are the four. And of course, there was discussions about, are we going to put Into the Woods in there? And then you have to go, well, what shows are there because Into the Woods was there? What did Into the Woods do that gave us A, B, C, and D? And it's like, we can't find, like, Music Man's not in there. I love the Music Man, but I'm like, I cannot tell you what the Music Man created a space for. So...
Oh, there is so much room for debate.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, and that's the point of the point of the book was originally it was we want to have college students that are going to start musical theater have just like a base understanding of like, hey, you should know these 50 shows. And as we were working on it, I was like, let's create some debate, and that's healthy. That's healthy. I want people to say, you idiot. How could you not have the Music Man in there? Because it gave us ba 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 ba. Fabulous. We'll do a second edition. But that's the point.
50 key honorable mention stage shows.
I mean, I feel like there should be an honorable mention because there's so many shows in there that I know people are going to be like, how dare you?
Was Titanic in there?
It wasn't. No, Titanic.
Titanic. Rebecca set the stage for a bunch of scandals.
Yes, it did. It did. That's actually, we should have done that. Carrie's not in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of shows that I know are not represented. I know people are going to be angry about, but that's awesome. Like, write your own book if you want to like include those, or reach out to us and tell us why you think this show should be included or why that show should be off the list.
There's got to be a follow-up to this because the musical theater history, and I feel like, side note, you and Jen Tepper need to have like a musical theater trivia showdown.
She's going to win. I bow to Jen right now. Jen will win this.
Yeah. Oh my God. Her knowledge is incredible. And yours is too. I feel like there's so much to know. And you as an educator too, as a teacher, you have to choose what you focus on because there's only so much in the day and so much time in the day. And when like now, even my kids, we talked about my kids a second ago, they're not learning cursive anymore. There's just not time enough in the day to teach them cursive. There's other things that are technologically necessary now to include, like how to be a good online citizen, not to, like, that's part of their curriculum is to learn not to cyberbully or be cyberbullied, right? A huge thing.
Great. I think that's fantastic. I had no idea because that was around when we were, I think we're around the same age. You're probably
41.
Oh, okay. I'm 38. So that wasn't around when we were growing up.
No, none of it. Because I in 98, when I went to college, I left my analog modem and had broadband in university.
Yeah.
So we are of that special little cusp of knowing what modem use is like in AOL. You've got mail. That was the best sound. What
a sound. And that dial-up sound. Oh my God. I lived for that.
So my point was, as an educator, when you're thinking about the book, you're thinking about what goes in, and you're trying to narrow down the 50 and figuring out what is important. Equally important is how are you determining what to leave out? Because there have to have been, I mean, I don't know how many Broadway shows there have been in the history of Broadway. I picture like crime scene, a detective sort of room where you've got pins and strings going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing.
It actually was very similar to that, which was like, it was like you would put in a show and then you would create like branches and go, what stemmed from this show? And there are some shows where, like we were saying before, you know, people really love, but we're like, I can't figure out what this show is doing. Or, that show did that, but there was a show before it that did it before that one. So maybe that one's the one that should go in. But that's how we pieced it together.
Could you trace it back to specific people? Like Sondheim being one of them.
Sondheim is one. Hal Prince is one. Rodgers and Hammerstein are two. Those were the names that I think were really coming up the most in terms of a really influential thing. And that's, but unfortunately, that's also one of the things that we cover in the book, which is as much as we would love to rewrite the history, it is really for the longest time a bunch of white guys who were rich, who were creating this art form. And as much as we would love to say that wasn't the case, it was the case. And so I think when people read the book, they might go, wow, there's a lot of diversity that's lacking in the book, but that's also the history of the theater. And now we're I think if we like rewrite it and try to make shows seem more important than they actually were, I think that dissipates the current struggle that we're having right now and the discussions we're having right now about why theater needs to change.
So then looking forward, what do you think has been the most recent production that is going to influence modern American theater?
Besides Hamilton? Okay, besides Hamilton, I think you're going to see a lot more things like Come From Away, which I think is really focused on human kindness. I think that's going to be something that you're going to see a lot of. I think A Strange Loop is going to be something that's really going to knock things out of the park because it's so brilliant and so funny and so truthful. It doesn't sugarcoat anything. And I think that's an exciting time to be in, that you can have something as fierce and ferocious as that, and it's entertaining at the same exact time. So I'm hoping people will be inspired by Michael's work to create more things like that. So those are the shows that I'm picturing going forward.
I hope that too, along the lines of inclusion, representation, and diversity, that Hamilton changed the game in terms of casting, and you touched on that among many other things. And I think it was Brandon Uranowitz, when I was talking with him for Burn This.
Oh yeah,
he said that was the first time in his long career he has played a character who is openly gay as an openly gay man in real life, where being gay wasn't a plot point.
Absolutely. Because I mean, how many years of gay plays have there been where that if you were a gay character, that was the main issue. That was the central issue. And I'm hoping that we'll have more shows like that where a gay character, they're part of it. A trans character, they're part of it. It's not this big thing. It's because it's part of our daily life. And I'm hoping we'll see more shows like that. I'm really hoping that we will.
Yeah, I think we will. I think we should.
What Brandon's coming from. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really hope so. So let's wrap up here with my 3 standard closing questions that I ask everybody. The first one, just very simply, is what motivates you?
What motivates me? Love. The love of this, the love of storytelling. That's what motivates me. The fact that I get to wake up every morning. I realize that at any second, this could all be taken away. And so my feeling is you have to live every single day to the fullest, because you just don't know when the clock is going to stop. That's what motivates me.
I've started feeling that way 40. It was like a switch. When I hit 40, I was just like, oh, my parents are old, and there's people younger than me dying. And one of the big things that hit home was around our neighborhood, our family of theater, was Nick Cordero's death from COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Like younger than me, your age, younger than me, just perfectly healthy and then gone. Like that hit me in a way that nothing else had at that point.
One of the healthiest guys you've ever seen in your life, and young. And then just not here.
Yeah.
Not here. In a million years, no one would have predicted that. There's something about approaching 40 that really is. I don't want to say a slap in the face, but it's just a nice reminder of how much time you have left.
So, I was talking to my therapist about this the other day. I was like, in my 40s, and now I'm 41, that now it's like I think about death a lot. She goes, "Welcome to being 40." That's what people do. I'm like, oh, great. Well.
Also asking now for the copays ahead of time, so that's
of course. Okay. Second question then: what advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
If opportunity isn't knocking, build a door. If people are not appreciating your talent, you don't have to wait for them to validate it. You create your own opportunities, and don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to anybody. You can, especially teachers. Can I say that? Can I say that, or is that wrong?
No, you're a teacher. Say whatever you'd like.
You know what feels right in your gut. You know what your dreams are, and it does not matter if a teacher or anyone looks at you and goes, "Oh, you're not cut out for this business." Fuck that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be cut. You want this business. You want to be a part of it. Great. Find your way in.
I love that. I love that advice, because when you look at some of the people who are the most iconic right now, that you wouldn't traditionally think, like they don't fit the Corey Cott type, right? You brought up again. You look like a Josh Gad, somebody like that who has found such a place for his type of voice and his body type and so many things.
Josh Gad, Josh Lehman. I'm trying to think of some other people that fit that.
Look at Sis right now.
Yeah, it's like, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. It's your uniqueness is what sells you. And what drives me crazy is when I see musical theater programs look at somebody that's unique and go, oh my God, they're never going to be in the chorus of Newsies. We have to cut them from the program because they're going to stand out. They should stand out. That's the point. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what disheartens me, because I've seen so many great students that, because teachers did not know what to do with their uniqueness, the student left the business because they thought there was something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. It's the teacher is wrong. and I'm a teacher.
I think that's our pull quote for this episode. Teachers are wrong. No.
Teachers are wrong.
Teachers are wrong. Okay. Last question then. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Oh, Gypsy. I'm going to see Gypsy.
Why? Why Gypsy?
I love that score. I love that book. I think it's one of the first musicals to have fully three-dimensional characters in it. And the story to me is fascinating.
Wow.
Fascinating. That this woman would allow her daughters to do what they do because in some way it means they're getting validation from strangers. And I'm like, this is fascinating. That's that one.
I love that. All right. So where can we find you online?
You can find me on Facebook at Robert W. Schneider. You can find me on Instagram at Rob W. Schneider, Twitter, Rob W. Schneider, or listen to one of the 9,000 podcasts that I have. We'd love to have you come listen to us.
bpn.fm/behind the curtain
Thank
is
you.
the short link for your podcast. And of course, again, check the show notes of this episode for links to get tickets for J2, the J2 Spotlight Musical Theater Company season, and pre-order the book, which I cannot wait to read. It sounds like I'm just going to be going through earmarking so I can just text you and be like, the fuck, Rob, the fuck.
Yes,
like,
that's what we want. That's what we want. Like, let's have a conversation. That's what we want.
I love it. I love it. You can get more of me at thetheaterpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast, facebook.com/official theater podcast. Leave a rating and a review wherever you are listening now, including Spotify. Spotify allows you to do ratings now. This has been edited by Well-Rounded Hoodlum Productions. Thank you to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music, and Robert W. Schneider. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation.
Alan, it was an absolute pleasure. I hope we get to do it again.
Anytime, man. I'm here for you.
Yay.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.